Welcome to the Craft Beer Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. Today is a long time coming. A couple episodes ago, I released a podcast with my dear friend Tomas Slider at Culmination Brewing, and I can't tell you for how many years I told Tomas he needs to come on the podcast. And today's guest is the same way. I think I'm about to tear up. Jana Daisy-Ensign, how are you?
Hey, Steven. I am so glad to be here with you. I'm really good.
It has been years since I started the podcast in 2016 that I have, so that's what, 6 years, that I have bugged you to, hey, we need to tell your story. You've co-hosted episodes with me. You've done a phenomenal job. And then there was a time in your journey, which we'll talk about briefly, where you were out of cider. And I was so happy for you because it seemed like at that point in your journey, that was a good thing you were doing. But then I felt hard, like, oh, I didn't get her story. It was so awful. And then you came back into cider and I was like, okay, there's hope. And like, today's the day. I can't tell you, really, it is a joy in my heart.
You're so generous.
Yeah, you and your husband have just been, phenomenal. I started out writing about food carts, and then I got my first book contract, and then right after that, I got a contract to write a book about beer, and I started going to beer events, and I fell in love with a lot of people, and there's some people you just really fall in love with, and your husband Tim was in beer at the time, and you were in cider, and both of you were so welcoming, and it brought a lot of joy into my heart having that community, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all the work you've done. You've really lifted up the community and spread so much joy and so many amazing stories. You've really illuminated that. So I'm thrilled and honored.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a joy. I get to be, on one hand, I'm a life story alchemist and help people change their life. And on the other hand, I'm a culinary storyteller and I tell stories.
So good.
Okay, so questions that I ask on all my podcasts. Where were you born?
Ironically, I was born where I live now. I didn't always live there, but Oregon City, Oregon.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at Chico High in Chico, California.
And what's the mascot there?
Panthers.
All right. And then roughly 2001, you moved to Portland.
Correct.
But it was you and your husband Tim who moved to Portland. So where did you guys meet? Since I love Tim and he's such a wonderful part of your journey.
He is a wonderful part of my journey. We're coming up on a big anniversary soon. So
what is it?
It's going to be our 22 years together. So it's 17 years that we've been married and 5 years before that we were together. So a long time. It's a tipping point for me. I won't age myself too much, but it's the year where I'm like, okay, now we've been together longer than I've not been with you, which is great because he's my best friend and partner in crime. And we met in Chico, California, and really central to this story, we also worked on a bottling line together there. So, we were both already into the craft world. I kind of grew up visiting the brew pubs. Other kids might go to like other events and I would be like in the backyard playing in the sandbox with the brewers' kids. My dad was a big home brewer, so it's always sort of been part of my life.
And so when you say bottling, you mean at a craft brewery. You and Tim worked at a craft brewery bottling line in Chico.
Correct. I'm just going to say, I volunteered there. You can see my air quotes because I was definitely underage. But your volunteer hours would entitle you to some of the quality control bottles, that don't quite have the perfect labels, low fills, all that kind of good stuff, which I thought was the bee's knees.
So you guys were in Chico, and you had thought about maybe moving to Eugene. You thought about getting a PhD. And by the way, just because it's so apropos given what you do now, currently, professionally, but what was your undergraduate degree in?
Yeah, it was in communications. So go figure. Lots of storytelling, lots of words, lots of public speaking. I used to actually teach public speaking a lifetime ago back at Chico State. And, when I was a very young graduate student and, would definitely see my older graduate students, older undergrad students out and about and was like, I'm only 20, but it's fine, right? So, I thought I was maybe go on and, work in the sort of academic halls, but that's not where the life course took. But we did decide to move to Portland and sort of be in the epicenter here of the craft beer movement. My partner, my husband, Tim, had an opportunity to kind of get right in here, and it drove us up to live in a fun, vibrant city that we were really excited to be part of.
Okay, so and then your professional cider journey, as I understand it, 2006, you went to work for a distributor, and a distributor carried sake, beer, wine, mead, and cider. So you got to know cider there a little bit.
For sure.
And then 2011, you and your husband started a small company that no longer exists. So if people want to hire you guys, like I was thinking, ooh, I should have some clients hired. Oh, no, it's gone. But during that time, you guys were brand ambassadors for a couple small brands, including some cider brands. So that kind of got your cider world together. And then you had a significant, cider experience happen in 2012 at the Cider Summit. So for those, tell people what Cider Summit is and tell us about your experience.
Yeah, fantastic. So Cider Summit is now a 4-part event that happens in 4 different cities and 4 different times of the year. And so the Cider Summit that was sort of, a bit of a tipping point for me was the Portland one. It was, I would say back in 2012, the Southwest Carruthers Park. Alan Shapiro, for anybody who's in the know, a wonderful founder of that festival, and also somebody who I had the privilege of working with as he was part of SBS Imports, and we had worked with some of his import ciders as well as beers. I remember really distinctly, we were there serving cider, and it was raining, as it often is in June in Portland.
Yep.
And so everyone was kind of huddled underneath the tents, and there wasn't a lot of, attendance from the general population, but all of the cider people, the cider community, the cider makers, the cider ambassadors were really fun people, and, inevitably ended up, sampling each other's cider. And it was just such a fun time. I loved the community, and I was really wowed by the variety of different ciders available, the different flavors. I loved tasting ciders from all over the world, and I had been a big beer fan. I had been smitten on wine. I thought it was so kind of, sexy to be a wine sales gal, and, all these, different elements. I'd traveled, to various countries and tasted wine and met my wineries, and this was sort of the tipping point where I was like, this cider thing, this has got some real possibilities here.
Yeah, and just for those listening, Alan, if you're listening, I would love to have you on the podcast sometime and tell your story. I'm a big fan, and I remember being down at Fields Neighborhood Park at Cider Summit, and it was there and at the Spring Brew Wine Fest. That's where I learned that the part of you that I don't like, because you'd be at Spring Brew Wine Fest, or you would be at Cider Summit or any event, and at 9 a.m. you're like, hey, cider's great, try it, with a big smile, total sincerity, enthusiasm, and then 12 hours later at 9 p.m. you're like, hey, cider's great, total enthusiasm, try it. And for me, after about 4 hours, it'd be like, hey, cider's great. 4 hours later, drink it, go away. I just don't know how you did it. It was so impressive to watch you work an event. It kind of irritated me and inspired me all at the same time.
It's good when you get a reaction, right? What's going on over there?
It's like, is she doing cocaine? How is this possible?
Lots of yoga, Steven. I'm a mom. I've multitasked. I had 2 children during my course of working in the industry. I got some resiliency in my back pocket.
Yeah, but that's where I met you. Spring Brew Wine Fest.
Right.
And I met you. That's where you met Gemma and Carolyn.
So
just
good.
some amazing people in the cider world.
Yeah.
Which later, some of those people you met early on formed one of the cool organizations you started later. But 2013 is kind of a really cool phone call you got, which then led to you being at a lot of these events. So tell us about that phone call.
Yeah, well, let me set it up for you a little bit.
Yes.
So we had worked for that little distributor for a number of years, which was fantastic. And in 2007, this really cool brewery, you might know, Fort George, came on the scene. And we were pretty smitten on them. And I was pretty excited by the possibility of maybe seeing if they would let us sell their beer, which they were gracious enough to do. And we worked with them for a number of years. And that sort of led to the reality of us opening up our own little business. There was some more possibility to help support some of these brands in a really specific way. And, the landscape, of course, has changed over time. But, at certain points, distributors have really been very hands-on with supporting the brands and doing demos and tastings, something we've all missed during 2020.
Yep.
Glad that's coming back around. And then, folks, sometimes just need more kind of hand-holding. So that's sort of set us up to run our own little brand, which was called Powered by Yeast.
Yeah, by the way, I love marketing and branding, and I have my own opinions about it, and some of them are right or some of them are wrong. But what a phenomenal name, Powered by Yeast. Wow.
Thanks. I like that one too. I often tell my husband that I'm really good at coming up with names.
You are. It's one of my superpowers, naming things.
Yeah.
I have a few of them. One of them's naming things, and you have that skill as well.
Thanks. We share that. We share a lot of things. So, sorry, I went back a little farther, but 2011, I had a new baby, also a 3-year-old, and I was running a business by myself. So that was awesome.
Because what happened to Tim? Where did Tim go?
He went full time with Fort George. So, see ya. I love you.
So you and your husband were running a business together.
Right.
You had a new baby, a 3-year-old little one, and then your husband leaves you the business by himself to go work at Fort George.
Yeah, because, we can do it all. It's working moms.
Well, working moms can. Men cannot. Men are like, I was alone for half the day with the baby and I need a week off. And you're like, dude, I do this all day, every day.
Yeah, one of my signature moves used to be always getting out of the car, like on the phone, right? Like, okay, that conference call is done and I'm here at the spot, right? But so anyway, I was kind of surfacing around actually taking a beer job. It was a lot to run the business by myself at that time. And then I was kind of percolating on it. And then I randomly got a call on a Tuesday morning from Christy Kistler up in Shimmickam, Washington, who, for those who know, and if you don't know, is one of the co-owners of Fin River Farm and Cidery. And Christy told me that, she had met some folks who were from the Portland area who were really into craft, and, they had passed on our names. And she thought, I should know there's a cider revival afoot. And I was floored. I mean, she's so sincere and so authentic, and anyone who knows her knows that her passion is really palatable. And I was really intrigued, and we sort of got into this conversation together. I went out and scooped up all of the Fin River bottles that I could. I had the brand before, but I thought I could better retaste them. The Rumi quote, let the beauty we love be what we do, definitely spoke to my, poetic heart. And, I'm a long-winded person.
Give us that quote again.
Rumi, it's let the beauty we love be what we do.
Oh, man, I want to embody that. That's incredible.
It's one of my favorites, Stephen, and I saw it on the bottle, and it just, it's one of the, I'll get goosebumps talking about it. It was one of those moments where I'm like, oh, the universe is sort of aligning here. So we started sending back and forth emails and talking and, exploring what it would be like to work together. And, full disclosure, it was sort of like, well, we don't know exactly what we need. And I'm like, well, I know how to sell craft beverage. And they're like, well, you probably should come up and visit the farm. And I did. And the rest was sort of history. I ended up spending 6 wonderful years working with Fin River Farm and Cidery. And I love them all dearly. The owners are just fantastic people and, amazing cider. People will know that far and wide. And the mission, the driving force of really letting people know about sustainable agriculture and modeling how to do business differently is something that they do so well.
So you don't know this, but in the early 90s, gosh, I am so old that I can say the early 90s, but I visited Port Townsend. And I had a magical trip. I stayed in a lot of Victorian homes there, as you know.
Beautiful.
There's this underground, below ground basement jazz bar, a lot of fun things. I went to Fort Woden or Warden, however they say it. Looks like Woden when I read it, but I think they pronounce it Warden. And Officer and a Gentleman was filmed there with Richard Gere. And I had seen the movie, but then this, I didn't this. They must have filmed this movie here.
So cool.
And I think the internet even exists back in the 90s. So I got back home and I was able to get hold of a copy of the movie and rent it and go, they really did film it there. And I just fell in love with Port Townsend. I thought it was an amazing place. So fast forward in my journey, I guess now's the point where I'll drop in one of my favorite all-time Jana stories. I'm in Portland now. I'm living here in Portland, and I moved to Portland in 2004. And my first book came out. I got a contract for my second book, and I was starting to write about beer. And what I proposed to the publisher is that I would cover the story of Portland breweries, but since I love to travel, I do a road trip section. And I was going to go to one brewery in Hood River, which I did free. One brewery in Bend, Ale Apothecary, because he's absolutely crazy, but I love him. I thought I would do Astoria. I did Eugene, and then I put in little travel stuff in each chapter for that. And because I absolutely loved Port Townsend and I loved Fin River because of you, and I had cideries in the book as well, I thought I'll make one of my road trip sections Fin River. Because you're just south of Port Townsend, right. 5 minutes.
Yeah, super close.
So I'm at an event, and I was hoping for this, and then I meet you at an event, and I say, Jana, I got my second book contract. It just came through, and you're so great. I said, and Fin River's in it, and you go, it is? What's it about? It's about Portland breweries. And you go, how is Finn River in it? I said, well, I'm going to do cideries. And she says, I get that, but Finn River's in Port Townsend. I said, yeah. I've got a road trip section. And I tell you, and you say, that's great. And you say, now, what you said Astoria? And at that point in my journey, I knew you had this husband. I knew his name was Tim. I think I'd seen him once. I knew he was pretty awesome, but that's all I knew. I was pretty clueless. And I said, yeah, Astoria. And she goes, well, who are you hoping to to work with in Astoria? And I said, well, I really, really, really want to work with Fort George, but I don't know anybody there. And you grabbed my face and you said, Steven, my husband works for Fort George. We can make this happen. And I just literally, tears came to my eyes. I started welling up, and it's like, wow, the universe is like putting this all together.
I love that so much. It's so good. Fort George was like, I pulled your book back out this morning before we did our interview to look back, and I love the pictures and the way that you captured all the stories there. It's so good.
Yeah, one of the things I teach people now when I'm wearing my Life Story Alchemist hat is that, the universe is pulling for you. I think I own the universeispulling4you.com, and the universe responds. And I really believe that. And even then it was like, wow, I meet this amazing person in Port Townsend where her thing is, and her amazing husband is the one at Fort George. And it was just so affirming to me, like I'm on the right path.
Yes. I love that. And those people are solid gold too. Like, let me just give a huge shout out to the whole Fort George team and Chris and Jack. I mean, those guys are, second family as well. We've been so blessed, I will say, Tim and I, to, get to really work with some of the most amazing humans in this community.
Yeah, was lucky enough. Jake Burden owns Offshore Grill. It was in Rockaway Beach. Now it's in Manzine on the Oregon coast. I love the Oregon coast. And about a year and a half ago, I hosted a Fort George beer dinner.
So good.
Some of the dishes are made Fort George beer. Every course is a different Fort George beer. It's like, wow, I just feel like I've died and gone to heaven. I was happier. I was happier than a pig in mud.
I love it so much.
So what did you first start out doing at Finn River?
So I started doing sales because that's definitely what I already knew how to do. Started working with their distributor and kind of, initially launched in the Oregon territory. And then,
because at the time you started there, where was Finn River available?
It was available in Oregon and in Washington. And then there was a few kind of outlying places that had received some cider, via pallet shipment.
But it wasn't very big in Oregon.
Yeah, it had been in the market for a couple years. It's really tough sometimes in the market for brands that don't have representation in that local market because it's so easy to get on shelf and they get crowded out and get forgotten. And, definitely it was a higher tier product than a lot of the ciders that were sort of coming in at a lower cost. So it really takes, some storytelling for few folks to understand things like, organic farming practices and, salmon safe certification on the farm and, the nuances that really tell the story as well as getting people to take a chance on, buying maybe a slightly higher tier bottle, especially back in, 2013.
And then you were at Finn River 6 years?
Yep, 6 years.
And when you left, where was it? Because they make amazing cider. They are wonderful people, but someone has to sell it. I'm very convinced. It's just like people, I just did a podcast with Threshold Brewing, and Yarrick makes incredible beer, but his wife Sarah does the social media. And I don't care how good Yarrick's beer is. If she wasn't banging the drum, nobody would come drink his beer. And you sold that cider. And what was it like when you left?
It was awesome. It was really amazing.
I mean, how many states?
Yeah. It was amazing to grow with them. And so we had 12 states and 2 Canadian provinces. And we had grown, from no staff in the sales world to having, small staff and a few different geo territories. We'd opened up many relationships with many distributors. I was lucky enough to be able to, set foot on a plane and fly to a lot of the regions and work with the teams. We'd do a pretty intensive, turn around and try to get a much sales and cider ambassador time as humanly possible in a short duration of time and meet so many amazing people and also get such a great pulse. Steven, one of the things I really take away from that whole time is to get such a good pulse on where different communities are at with regard to their understanding and appreciation of cider, as well as obviously getting, to visit specific cideries in specific regions and, talk with bartenders and beer tenders and, cider tenders across the nation. That was pretty remarkable. remarkable. I feel like I have such a better understanding of sort of the pulse of cider as a result of that work.
And it kind of, that, I teach people that your path prepares you. And that really prepared you for what you do now, which we'll get into, toward the end of the podcast. But I just want to shout out to you because you really were part of it growing to being a phenomenal force. And after my book came out, I had people that would argue with me that, no, Fin River's made in Portland. I've seen Jana here. And because you did such a great job of selling Fin River in Portland, I had people telling me, and I'm like, no, I've been to the cidery. And they really thought it was a Portland cidery because of your efforts. That was pretty phenomenal to pull that out of your hat.
Well, you flatter me. Thank you.
That really did happen. I'm like, no, it's not. I mean, I love Portland, but it's and you should drink it, but it's not. It's in Port Townsend area.
Well, and people, now have this experience if they go to the farm. It's been so cool to watch that evolve. I remember we were standing, on the new property of, seeing the Brown farm and, standing in the old barn before it is what it is. And now, it's like gorgeous venue. Folks come and celebrate weddings and graduations, and the cider garden is, an active, vibrant place where people, eat local food that's produced by, small time makers. It's amazing what has unfurled. I love seeing that kind of real, organic, authentic growth that happens when people are just passionate and kind of following the next whisper, like you said.
Yep, exactly. No, Whisper exactly right. I teach people, I think I own that quietwhisper.com. But it's that quiet whisper, and you have to, that speaks to your heart. And a lot of people don't listen, but some people do. And it makes all the difference. Just a couple things I mentioned because I love it. And just because you introduced it to me, Fin River's blackcurrant cider. Oh, it's weird to me at the time because I hadn't had anything like it in my life. Now I've had lots of different kinds of ciders, but at the time I was like, what the hell is this? But it's phenomenal. The Pomme, which is not even a cider, it's an apple brandy. That stuff, that's like you put that on your Thanksgiving table and, have it with dessert and blow people's minds.
Yes, and stunning.
You've got a couple of ciders back from your time there that you absolutely love.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites was the Salalberry cider. That one, I don't think it even really hit the major market, but it's such a tribute to foraged items. It's like what's growing in the underbrush, what's sort of the underutilized, components that we could use as part of the cider world. We brought Autumn's Blush to market. That was a really fun one that's got a little bit of a pinkish hue. I'm a sucker for, pink ciders. So, there's a lot of them that are really amazing. I'll drink dry hopped still though, all day long, just really be happy with that. So clean, so bright.
Yeah. And then something really cool happened. So hats off to you. Your time at Fin River was amazing. They were so lucky to have you. And, a lesson that I've learned now that I feel like I'm a lot older now. I just feel like, okay, I guess I have some credibility out there. I'm a sage now that I'm old, but is that, chapters come to an end. And I've learned to really love the chapter I'm in because it will come to an end. Relationships come to an end. Friendships. There's people that I still care for them, but I moved. I don't see them anymore. And your chapter at Fin River came to an end. I mentioned I was so sad because I'm like, oh, I didn't get her story. But hats off for the time you had there. But now go back in time a little bit. 2013, you got some certifications.
Yeah, I started the cider professional journey back then. I think it was the first CiderCon that we had here in Portland, Oregon. Maybe it was winter of 2014, but whenever they first launched Certified Cider Professionals, we kind of got that right off the gate.
Yeah, I met Tom Oliver at that festival.
Yes.
A proper cider rock star.
Tom Oliver is the best. Do you know he just spoke for the cider symposium that we hosted, and he was kind enough to donate the money that he received to Palm Boots because he's so smitten on the work that women are doing in the cider community. I love that man.
I do too.
Great.
We'll talk about Palm Boots in a second. But yeah, I had so much fun with him. I said, well, what do you think of, I was just visiting with him, unofficial off the record. I said, what do you think of cider in Portland? And he says, Abe makes some weird cider, so it makes a proper cider. Because he, I think in Tom's world, at least when I knew him, but when I met him back then, there was like one way to make cider, West Country cider, that's it, period. And maybe he's evolved since then. That was a number of years ago. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny because, Abe talks about proper cider. So I just kind of was having, so what do you think of Reverend Nats? He says, oh, man. He says, what he makes isn't cider, but I sure do love it.
That sounds about right.
Okay, yeah. But you get cider certification.
So, that was our kind of foray into that. And, I'm a little bit of a geek. I really like, kind of learning and going deep on things I'm passionate about. And so I was really excited to see that we were starting as a community, as a cider community, to get some more formalized education. Big kudos to the American Cider Association, who's really led the charge with that, and their team of dedicated cider educators. And then we've seen that evolve. So there was a CCP level 1, and
so CCP is a certified cider professional.
Correct.
So that's level 1.
Level 1,
and that means you've got some knowledge, some understanding. You've passed some tests.
Correct. Yeah, and then the Pomme certification is the more advanced level, and I sat for that test in February 2020 before the world kind of collided, as we knew, at CiderCon with a number of folks. It was definitely a little bit more rigorous in terms of the academics, and there's a big tasting component, which is always where people kind of, yeah, that's the face, Steven. They're like, can you taste the flaw? Oh gosh, can you tell which region this is from?
Yeah, I just learned in those things, I just say, I get a sense of horse blanket.
This all tastes like wet mouse.
Yeah.
This one tastes really good.
The first time that I was at a beer judging event and someone said horse blanket, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Then I'm at a cider event and they said, yeah, mouse. And I'm like, what, like a mouse's nest? Like, how do you know what a wet mouse tastes like? Do I even want to know?
When I was back during my pregnancies, I used to have such a pronounced, sense of smell. And my husband was always like, you could just be like an aromatic judge, and it's, I have to say it's one of the things that's kind of stuck. I feel like that's a really superpower that is helpful when you're trying to taste and evaluate ciders.
Yes, yep. So, and it's level 2 certification is called what again?
It's the certified Pommelier.
Wow.
Like sommelier. And I was lucky enough to pass it, and I'm really proud to be part of, what is a small group. I think back at the point where we got the certifications back, there was like 14 of us in the country or something. So that was really cool. It's also such a nod. The long history of sommeliers is, such a esteemed, category in the wine education arena. And then, of course, Cicerone in the beer world. I've definitely, enjoyed working out in the world and meeting some of the really, super educated, beer Cicerones. And, if you sit down with somebody like that for lunch, you're like, so what should I order here? What's good? Because you obviously have the palate, right?
Yep.
So it's cool to see cider coming up. We've talked a lot about cider being sort of a young industry. It has long history, deep roots, but here, especially kind of in the Northwest, where we're, really reinventing it over and over again, it feels exciting that we are getting to create some, more standardized sense of education and just creating a wealth of folks who are really passionate and really knowledgeable about the category.
And then 2015, you already mentioned Pomme Boots, but you will talk about it. You started something amazing. I've raised daughters, and it's a heartache to me to think that someone would experience obstacles doing what they want to do professionally because of their gender. That to me, that just, given having raised daughters that I cherish, it's such a horrible thing. And there has not been in certain industries, not a lot of support systems. So Pink Boots is a thing, supporting women in craft beer. Terry Ferendorf is a chapter in my second book. I love Terry. She should be in the Craft Beer Hall of Fame. The things that she has done, the first women blank blank blank, is incredible. But you started Pomme Boots, you and a couple of your friends that you met along the way. So talk to us about Pomme Boots.
Yeah, I would love to. As we've kind of trailed back, I have a history that's also in beer. And so, women in beer, coming together and, finding that commonality, as you mentioned, Terry, with Pink Boots, definitely kind of part of my lexicon. And when I came all the way into cider, there was no parallel. There wasn't anything really like that. At the time, I had some dear friends who were really involved in Pink Boots, and I said, gosh, these ladies in the cider world are really like pining for something like this. They want to have a stronger sense of community. They want to have, a better web of education and networking. And I was lucky enough to, have some good advice and some good colleagues, Gemma Schmidt, who at the time worked for Reverend Nats, and Jenny Dorsey, who was with Schilling Cider. Both were also really...
Both incredible women.
Incredible women.
Yep.
Really fantastic ladies. Since then, Caitlin Brom, who now owns Yonder Cider and The Source, has also been a really strong leader with us for a number of years. And so grassroots, 100%, right? Like we're like, we don't know what we should do. And they're like, just get started, right? That's always the answer, isn't it?
Yep.
I mean, there's a theme here.
Yep. Take the first step.
Just take the first step and kind of, get in there. And we put the call out and, found that there was a really strong resonance. A lot of ladies inside were like, yes, let's come together. Let's share resources. Let's learn from each other. Let's
cheer each other on and get us help dispel the sense that I'm alone in this.
100%. Yeah. Change the landscape because, I feel like, I've been lucky in the beer world to, really work with a lot of amazing people, but I certainly know, and, there's a lot going on right now. If you're tracking, what's happening in the world, where there's a lot that has been really challenging and really not equitable. And there's been just a number of terrible instances that have been able to, kind of persist. And, it is through dialogue, it is through awareness and education, it is through community action that we actually change the landscape of things. And something that has always been exciting to me, the cider revival, being on the front end of the cider world, is to get to help shape the community that we live in. I mean, I love the liquid, I love the connection to farming, and I love the idea that we have a powerful voice and an opportunity to shape that. So we started Pomme Boots, kind of sister to Pink Boots, back in 2015. And, we've done a lot of grassroots work since then. Again, American Cider Association, I'll give a nod to them. They've been gracious enough to let us host our annual meeting at the CiderCon, big cider conference of the year, a number of years. And this year we have been able to start collaborating with Pink Boots as they have opened up their membership to ladies of all fermentation sciences. And we're really going to be stronger together. It's a powerful moment in time. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of really brilliant hearts and minds working on this. And I'm so excited to see what we're going to be able to do together.
That's fantastic. And a stupid question, forgive me, I should have asked it sooner, but not everybody knows why Pomme Boots. What's Pomme mean? Some people do, but some people don't.
Well, great. No stupid questions, right? It's a reference to the apple, right? So Pomme. It was our fun little play on words. What can I say? I love naming, Steven. That was my geeky name.
Because Pomme is...
It's part of the genus, right, for apple. So I mean malice, in some areas, but it's also a reference in numerous languages to apple. So
yeah, so this is part of the biology, what's botany? Part of the botany of the apple.
Correct.
Yeah, and that was the play on words. Yep, exactly.
Yep, our fun play on words.
And you say there's no dumb questions. I used to think that. When I was in corporate banking, I ended up working with a lot of local banks. I was at a bank that we basically bought people's money and loans, and I worked with a lot of loan officers. And I discovered, when the same loan officer asks you the same question every month, 10 months in a row, that there are stupid questions. So that's why I burned out on banking. Those loan officers, I just really? I mean, come on.
I love it. Yeah. Well, it's such a good, I think part of the joy of the storytelling that you do too is, that we all have an opportunity to keep hearing folks' authentic stories and noticing, and you've alluded to it, and I'll just call it out, noticing that we all come from different perspectives and point of view. So I think, asking questions for better understanding is something that, makes the world a better place.
Yes. And I just want to make it clear that personally, I'm wholehearted for people asking questions. And in that sense, there isn't a dumb question. And it's the heartache when someone has a real simple question they don't ask and they miss out on stuff.
Yeah.
You got to have a culture, I think, if you have a healthy organization where it's okay to ask questions and to learn, and people aren't made to feel shamed for not knowing.
Yeah.
I want to be really clear about that.
But I could see that moving you out of corporate banking was, again, the universe pushing you in the right direction. Like, get the hell out.
I'm so much more fulfilled, and I help way more people.
I can't even see you doing that.
I did like wearing a suit and tie, but that was about it.
I can actually kind of see that.
I'm ready to move on to a tuxedo. I want to travel sometimes and have a tuxedo.
That's
the next thing.
I like it. Stylish.
Okay, and then you took a break from cider, and then in 2019 you came back into the cider world. And was this like a Godfather experience? Where they pulled you back in?
They were keeping tabs on me, I worked for a minute with the Downtown Oregon City Association. I live in in downtown, or I live in Oregon City. And that was kind of a fun opportunity because it was all events. Because obviously a lot of the work I've done has been event driven. And I was able to run a wine and spirit walk, and we ran the First City Festival. And it was really fun. After making my own schedule and traveling all over the nation, though, I will say I was kind of excited then to have an opportunity to come all the way back into Cider and start actually making plans for events across Oregon and Washington and California with the Northwest Cider Association. 2019 fall, I took a job coming back to do that work with them.
And they're a fantastic organization. I've been cheering them on for a long time. Emily's done a lot of great work. She's the executive director, and it was actually started by local cider makers who started the association. Eventually, they grew to where they could have employees and have a director. And did it feel kind of surreal to you? Because when you were at events, you sold Finn River, like I said, so hard that people thought it was made in Portland, and I loved it. I've drank so much Finn River in my life, it's ridiculous because of you. But you also, I knew of Reverend Nat making great cider because of you. I knew Abe made great cider because of you. I knew Swift made great cider, and you raised all the boats in addition to yours. Did it feel surreal to come back and say, now I represent all the ciders in the Northwest, because now I'm with the Northwest Cider Association?
Yeah, it's a pretty magical opportunity. Stephen, the fun thing is, we've sat down before to promote Oregon Cider Weeks, which, has been that intersection, with the Northwest Cider Association. I sat on the planning committee for Oregon Cider Weeks for numerous years. And in that work, we really felt like there was a connection that needed to be made with bartenders and with, influencers and with people who maybe needed to have a deeper understanding and more fun with cider and meet cider makers. And so we started hosting trade events. And so, I know you've attended some of those, and that was the nature of the type of event that I was pulled back in to help facilitate.
And that was fall 2019.
Fall 2019.
And something happened early 2020 that changed all of our plans.
So cancel all in-person events, right? Done.
So my job description, just erase it.
Yeah. It was a weird time. I know everyone has their own story, but for sure I was like, I just got hired to do all in-person events, and now in-person events don't exist. So I hosted a lot of cool virtual happy hours in 2020 with the Northwest Cider Association. We did a lot of resources for the cideries. It's been really fantastic and makes my heart sing to get to work with so many different cideries. Like you said, I love the overall community, and I do think that, a rising tide does raise all ships. So it is a real aligned opportunity. And then we knew we could only do so many virtual tastings. Yep. I was lucky enough to even do virtual cider summit celebrations, again with Alan. It's like it all comes full circle. But then we did some really cool pivoting, like lots of folks have, and thought, here we have this opportunity to tap into what is really a primed online market where lots of folks are ordering and shipping things to their home. And we have all of these amazing cideries who are all working overtime to try to figure out how to catch up on revenue. Maybe their tasting rooms are closed. Maybe they don't. How to survive. Yes.
Yep.
How to wear all the different hats and keep it all going in a time of uncertainty. So the answer was the Cider Club. So that kicked off in fall of 2020. It took, a good chunk of the year to sort of iterate, the different notions of what that would look like and do the research and do the homework. I mean, And
you were one of the main people creating that, organizing it, putting it together. I know Emily helped too, but that was kind of your baby that you're birthing. It's probably not as hard as birthing a baby, but I know it's not as hard as birthing a baby. I've not birthed a baby, but I've seen it done, and it's like,
you're
wow,
right, Steven.
I couldn't do that. I should just stop talking. But I mean, you kind of catalyzed all of that and has a big hand. NorthwestCiderClub.com is where people can check on it. We did a whole podcast, you and I and Emily, about the Northwest Cider Club.
Yeah.
But simply it's a subscription box where people can get cider from the Northwest sent to 40 different states across the United States.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's like a wine club, but for cider lovers, or what I call cider curious or cider enthusiasts. It's really a fantastic way for folks to get to explore the world of Northwest cider. And just like we were talking about, not just one cidery. Again, all these different cideries, of different sizes, located in different geo regions. Some of them are orchardist. Some of them, only use native yeast. Some of them only use, bottle conditioning. There's a lot of nuances. And so, the world of cider, as I know it, is really vast, but I understand that that's not everyone's understanding of it. And so part of the mission of this, association, and then part of the mission of the club specifically, is to help bridge the gap, to connect cider makers with cider drinkers. And I think that the opportunity to sample so many different varieties and flavors is really what opens people's eyes up and makes them sort of, go from being curious, maybe I like it a little bit, to being all in.
And in case people don't listen to the podcast, just in real brief, the podcast about the North Cider Club, there's 4 subscription boxes. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm close. 4 times a year.
Yep.
And you get, one is 6 smaller bottles from 6 different cideries, or you can get 12 bottles, so 2, 2, 2, and 2. So you have one for you, one to share with your significant other. And those are the first 2 boxes. The next box, you get big bottles, 750s, and you get 4 of those, and that's a more high-end cider. Or the fourth one, which captivates my imagination, you get the 4 6 bottles and the 4 big bottles. You get 10 different ciders 4 times a year. At the end of the year, you've had cider from 40 different cideries across the Northwest.
You did a perfect summary. Isn't that fantastic?
It sounds amazing.
It's such a fun exploration. It's really great. People are giving us a lot of great feedback, and it's just been a ton of fun. We've been learning so much as we go, and we've definitely getting to work with, a lot of different folks in a lot of different corners of the world. And then, hearing where different people are at on their cider journey. And so it's a great intersection. And I think that the consistency of, being able to count on something like a subscription box where you can just sit back and relax, and you don't have to stand at the, cider shelf and scratch your head and, kind of wonder what to do. We're trying to demystify cider a little bit and make it more accessible and something that people feel like they're more comfortable with, and they have more vocabulary to find what they would like to drink.
And it's kind of like you not only give the cider, but you get forgive me, but like a recipe card, basically, but a little card that explains, here's a bit about the cidery, and here's a bit about the cider for each of the 6, or really they should get the 10.
Right.
So you kind of get a little information and learn, that's what this kind is, that's what that kind is, because craft cider is way bigger than people have ever, they don't even understand all the different styles, or there's dessert apples and spitters and all this different stuff that when I learned, I'm like, what the heck is all this? But you're really giving people an incredible education.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It is a chance to demystify, I think, and it's so easy when you're all in on something to not see how complex it can be. And so that is really the idea. And the stories, you're a storyteller, I'm a storyteller, hearing about, somebody's little orchard and knowing that they're out there cultivating it, maybe with their kids running around, and, they got this really hard cold freeze, and, that makes the apples, have this kind of transaction. And, here we love to do slow cold ferment. Like, there's so much magic in the actual evolution of the cider making story that's happening on each and every individual cider maker's, either orchard or in their fermentation facilities, that's a really nuanced part of it, as well as the final finished, whether the bottle is cork finished or whether it's, something that you should absolutely pair with mussels, or if it's something that, you should drink all on its own on a hot summer day. The world is vast. It's a great place to explore.
Well, and the thing that just captivates imagination about the subscription service is it's great for people that don't know cider, but then there's cider aficionados across the U.S., and I'm biased, I know it, but I think like Portland is one of the best beer cities in the world, and we have some of the best cider in the Northwest in the world, and we have an embarrassment of craft riches. We really, really do. And so if someone's not from the Northwest, they can get ciders that they can't get any other place. And if they do live in the Northwest, they'll get certain ciders like you did a Montana box. And if you don't live in Montana, some of those are not distributed outside the state of Montana. And so it really is, for the people that love cider, what a great opportunity for them to kind of like, I finally get to have the cool cider.
Yeah, 100%. It is really cool for folks across the nation to get to drink in the Pacific Northwest. And we've got folks out in Chicago who are receiving the boxes. We've got folks out, in Texas. Like, they're definitely cider geeks. And I see some of their names and know who some of them are, because I know that they're big cider lovers. And they're like, yes, we can get this stuff. And it's really a cool way to knit the community across the geographical territories as well.
So you loved cider. You took a break. You're back in cider. You seem really, really fulfilled right now, this chapter, this time in your journey.
I'm feeling great. Yeah, I'm doing a little cider consulting on the side, and I'm digging into my garden at home, and my apples are really beautiful right now. They're all leafed out. We have a little mini orchard out in Oregon City on our family farm, and
Earth and Sky Farm.
Earth and Sky Farm.
I've been there. It's incredible.
Thank you. It's I think the gold or silver lining is, the opportunity to sometimes slow down a little bit and root in. It's been a crazy year for everyone. But I've seen my kids a lot more and haven't been jet setting around. And so, yeah, it's a good place to be in. I feel really incredibly grateful and lucky. And I so thank you for taking time to tell my story.
Oh, you got it. So 2 things we'll close with. Well, 3, but 2 in particular. Did I hear correctly? So you helped grow an incredible cidery. You know an amazing amount of information about cider. You're kind of a marketing genius, and I don't say that lightly because I'm pretty opinionated behind the scenes about what should be done, branding and marketing. And I'm not always right, but I definitely think I am. And people can reach out and consult with you and have you help them grow their cidery. Are you kidding me?
Well, just like we said, one foot in front of the other, right? So I've been kind of ruminating on it, and I've been dipping my toe in for the last year or so. So yeah, in theory, they could reach out to me.
Well, if you own a cidery, and you should hire Jana for an hour and just have her look at your stuff. This at minimum, this is my vision,
Yeah.
But I just know that if I was working with a cider, I would say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to call Jana, find out her hourly rate, ask her to read all the stuff, take some notes, and then just let her talk at you for an hour. And whatever you say would be gold.
Thank you.
It would. I guarantee it. I know it. And the second thing, and we should have covered this earlier, but if there's a woman listening to this podcast and she's in cider and she feels alone, she can reach out to Pomme Boots and have some sense of connection, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And right now, Pomme Boots is part of Pink Boots as a drop down. If you become a member, you can pull down your chapter. And typically in the past, it's been all geographically identified chapters. You could be in Portland or Albuquerque, New Mexico. And now you can actually pull down Pomme Boots. So that's where that community is sort of going and growing to be a really international opportunity. We do have a private Facebook group as well. So if people search it up, Pomme Boots on Facebook, and they ask to be part of that private group, it's it's just ladies. So we'll admit you happily.
Yep. So, but international, you said.
Yeah.
Because I have people listen to the podcast literally all over the world.
Yeah.
And so if there's a woman that works in cider outside of the U.S., I can't, it's hard enough in the U.S. In some countries, it's really rough to be a woman. It almost brings me to tears. And wow, if you're working in cider and you really feel alone, what a great opportunity, even internationally.
Yeah, and we actually have had some really great cross-pollination already, in the years past. And Pomme Boots has, been an international reach, and Pink Boots is as well. So super fantastic. Now, as you know, the world is vast, but also really interconnected. We have the ability to, make those connections so seamlessly thanks to all of the great internet capabilities.
And then just as we close, tell us about some of your favorite cider styles?
Thank you for asking. That's such a good one. I do like to drink seasonally, and I do like to drink, based on sort of, time of day, whatnot. So I am a huge fan of pairing, a light sparkling cider, something with a lot of high carbonation with seafood. I'm a huge fan of seafood. But, I also will like to go a little deeper, like heirloom varietals, single varietals, Kingston Black, the Porter's Perfection, some of these really like geeky apples that, you can they have their own weight and their own complexity. I love drinking those and just really kind of savoring them like you might wine and just enjoying the nuances. And then I told you before, I'm a dry hop cider girl. I will just drink a dry hop cider and be so darn happy if it's not actually sweet. If it has to legit be dry, and, my long history working with hops, and we grow some hops on our farm. And, I have lots of friends who are hop farmers and connected to that. I mean, the hop varieties are out of control. There are so many good ones. So, don't be afraid to use something really good and really vibrant and pineapple-y and citrusy. And, just that is like magic because it's clean, bright apples. And then it's fresh aromatics and just vibrant profiles. It's like drinking the color lime green.
That is fantastic. You just gave a long soliloquy. I can't say the word. Can you say the word soliloquy?
Not 5 times fast.
Yeah, I can't spell it or say it. But you just gave a long dissertation. And if someone heard some things they've never heard before, like Kingston, what? That's a kind of apple.
Right.
It makes an incredible, very different cider. So if something caught you just rewind it and then write it down and go try that, because you really gave a really amazing answer. But there may be some things that someone new to cider had never heard of.
Yeah, sometimes we got to slow down. Sorry, got to unpack it. Like, do you guys want to hang out for 5 hours? Because we got a lot to talk about with cider.
Okay, and then when does the cider book come out?
Oh, my cider book?
Yeah. I'm tempted to go by JanaLovesCider.com just for when you're ready. And then we can promote the book and just call it Jana Loves Cider.
Don't you think we want to be interactive on video? And nobody wants to read anymore, right? Or do they? I don't know.
I'm old. I read real books. Okay. I don't even want the thing on the computer. I want actual paper.
I won't even admit it, but I've been listening to Audible a lot lately. I'm sorry. It's so good, though, because I love walking in nature. And it's like a great I'm a multitasker.
Well, there you go. So you can write the book and then you can record the audio version for Audible.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, let me know what people want to learn about.
I just think if you did ever write a cider book, I think it would be phenomenal.
Thank you.
I really do. Because you have a gift and you have a passion and it's been amazing. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for the small ways that you've been a positive impact to my journey and my family's journey. All the best to your husband, Tim, who I love. He's just amazing, and your incredible kids, and just keep doing all the amazing things you do.
Steven, thank you so much. You're so generous. I'm so glad that our paths crossed, and I really do appreciate all the advocacy you've done for us personally, my husband and myself, and for the brands that we've worked with, and for the association. You are a true storyteller, and it is really heartening. So thanks for the time today, and thanks for folks listening.
You got it. Cheers.
Cheers.